Okay, it's almost 4 a.m. Alexa, stop. And I'm headed for South Station to catch the Acela to New York City for a preview of a new addition to the Kindle lineup. That's all they said. Can't talk about it until next week, but I thought I'd do some recording to chronicle the one-day trip down and back to New York City to visit with a couple of Amazon executives. And I'll be getting Uber in about a half an hour, headed for South Station. My auto sleep app says I got 4 hours of sleep, so I hope there'll be some that I can add on the train. Good morning.
I recorded that sleepy opening bit a week ago, Friday, October 12th, and Amazon lifted its news embargo on the briefing Tuesday morning, October 16th. That was at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. If you are a subscriber to my free Kindle Chronicles newsletter, you received an email at approximately 9:02 with news of the all-new Kindle Paperwhite. It's available now for pre-order, with the first shipments arriving on November 7th. I am here at Ocean Park, Maine. I'm in the cottage that has heat, so it's a very quiet time of year in the off-season. Beautiful up here, sunny day, brisk outside, and the ocean that I'm looking at here out the window is very blue. It's just like a dark cobalt blue for some reason. I don't know if it gets bluer as it gets colder, but it looks pretty cold today. And I am going to tell you the story of this major update for the Paperwhite. Along the way, I will include a couple of color audio clips from my Amtrak ride to New York, and while I was waiting in the Amazon waiting area before my briefing. And then I recorded some post-briefing first impressions on a beautiful October day on 34th Street in Manhattan, about as far away from this scene as you can imagine. That was on my way back to Pennsylvania Station. So I hope you'll enjoy the ride and learn enough about the new Paperwhite to help you decide whether this Kindle has your name on it, or maybe the name of someone you love enough to buy them the newest member in this nearly 11-year-old family of Kindle e-readers.
4:50 a.m. I'm sitting in the quiet car of the Acela, about to pull out of South Station in 10 minutes. I have a banana, a bottle of water, and I've had 4 hours of sleep, which I plan to add to on the ride. Hopefully the quiet car will really be quiet. The adventure begins. I'm at the 6th floor of an Amazon office space that's next to the bookstore across from the Empire State Building on West 34th Street. A little tired, looking forward to a half hour with Kevin Keith, who is the head of Amazon Devices. We talked to him back in March on the 500th episode of the show. So he's going to be here, plus someone who runs product development for the Kindle side. And I'm very excited to see what might be announced today. This is, as I've grown accustomed to, pretty Spartan office space. There is a rug, and waiting area has a couch and two comfortable chairs, one uncomfortable chair, some coffee nearby, and a plant. There is a plant, and there's an umbrella stand, so that's handy. High ceilings, kind of industrial space.
At that moment, my host from Amazon's PR agency came to fetch me to take me in for the session. We walked down a couple of hallways to a room that felt like a community college classroom. I don't remember any art on the walls, just a table. I don't think it was a table made from a door like the famously Spartan furniture in some Seattle offices for Amazon. Awaiting me were Kevin Keith, Vice President for Amazon Devices, and Joerg Tewes. He's head of product management for Kindle, and there was also a woman that I've met before from Amazon's in-house media relations team. I'm going to take a moment here to talk a little shop about my coverage of the briefing, which followed a similar process as my last trip to New York for the introduction of the Kindle Oasis in April of 2016. It's a fantastic opportunity to be included in these private briefings about the new devices. They're embargoed for a few days, so you have time to kind of consider what you've heard and prepare your coverage. But the format poses a particular challenge for me compared perhaps with other members of the media. I don't think anyone else enters an Amazon device briefing hoping to record enough audio to fill the better part of a 45-minute show. They're doing smaller clips, and there may be recording just for the purpose of writing stories. My ground rules have been no recording of the initial part of the briefing when the new product's features are described, and then there's time at the end for recorded questions and answers. I tried to get that format changed in advance of this briefing, but I didn't succeed. I don't know if my message actually got to the people at Seattle that I usually deal with, and I should have done it about a week and ahead of the session. But anyway, as I arrived, they said, no, sorry, you can't record until the briefing, the overview of the product is finished, and then we can have some Q&A. Well, this meant that when Kevin Keith began his well-practiced but natural presentation of the new Paperwhite, I was thinking mainly of the clock. I knew that everything he was saying would be covered in a very thorough press release, embargoed until the official release, and I just wanted him to get through it as quickly as possible so I could turn on the bad boy Blue Yeti microphone that I carried with me in my knapsack, and I had it hooked up to Logic Pro 10 running on my MacBook Pro computer. So I had a good setup ready for when I was going to be able to start recording, and I wanted that to happen sooner rather than later. I took notes in my reporter's notebook while Kevin was speaking. I didn't ask any questions. I had some, and I just thought, no questions. If I ask questions, it's going to be even less time that I can record. And when I look back, I realized I didn't even ask to hold the new Paperwhite. I could see that it had a flush front screen without the bezel of the 2015 Paperwhite. It's very handsome. But I can't tell you what the rubberized back feels like, or whether I could detect with my hand that it's about 10% lighter and thinner than the previous model. I don't think I even picked it up in my hand. I just was nodding and indicating that I understood everything that Kevin was saying so that we could kind of keep it moving. If I had thought to bring one of my Paperwhites, they're now 3 years old, then I probably would have said, okay, I want to hold one in one hand and I want to hold the new one in the other, see if I could detect the improvements in the weight and the thinness. But if I've got a Paperwhite, I think it's probably back in Denver, or it might be in storage in Cambridge while we continue our construction project. In any event, Kevin took about 15 minutes to describe the new Paperwhite, and that meant that my audio of the recorded Q&A session is about 15 minutes. Let's listen to that now, and afterward I'm going to go back into some more detail about the Paperwhite's improvements, and also take a look at the new software that was released at the same time for the Paperwhite and other Kindles, including the current base model Kindle and the top-of-the-line Oasis. I've learned in the past that you guys improve and innovate based on feedback from customers.
Yep.
So you've got a new product here. What would you say was the prime bit of feedback, however many years ago it was when you were envisioning this, that led to this new Paperwhite?
Yeah, we very much pay attention to our customers. We listen a lot in direct feedback that we get through reviews, as well as talking directly to our customers. And one of the things we heard from Oasis and on Voyage is that they love this flush front display. Mm-hmm. It gives a real sleek, modern look. It feels great in the hand. So that was one of the innovations we wanted to bring down to the Paperwhite tablet, or excuse me, the Paperwhite e-reader. Right. And that is one that we really thought a lot about. It's very difficult to do that and to be able to maintain a really low price point. And so that was a big innovation for us. And the second was waterproofing. Waterproofing is one that customers have really loved about their Kindle Oasis, and be able to bring that to the Paperwhite is also something that we really wanted to be able to do. And likewise, to be able to go beyond just water resistance or splash proof, mm-hmm. just something that's truly waterproof. Yeah. Across a bunch of different environments. We hear from our customers all the time, and actually see it on social media, where people will take their Paperwhite with a plastic baggie to the hot tub or to the pool or to the beach, and we wanted to make sure that they didn't have to do that. They have a great experience with their device.
This could result in a fall in baggie stock. Big problem for them. Okay, here's a bone. I don't know if it's a bone, but it's feedback. I'm a customer. Yeah. This is feedback. One of the things that is a minor irritation to me, but
it's a customer irritation, is that when I'm reading a Kindle book on my Oasis, and then I switch to reading it on iOS Kindle app, the controls here on the lower left are slightly different. And in other words, on the iOS, if you tap, you get pages of total, which is handy. I'm on page 25 of 322. Hours left to read the book and time left to read the book. On the Oasis, I get location, which Jeff himself told me 8 years ago was like a dead-end road. They realized nobody likes locations. But the Oasis still has location. It does have page number, but not pages of total pages. So you get these sort of minor, somewhat irritating differences among Kindle devices. And the one that I think is the most egregious, and I think it's also in your area, is on the Echo Spot, the buttons on the top are low volume, turn it on, plus volume. On the Echo Show, the turn it on button is on the left, and then it goes low volume. So when I'm groping for my Echo Spot, I'm thinking, okay, plus is, oh no, this is the Spot, not the Show.
Right.
And it just seems like an unfortunate bit of not coordinating among devices in a way that would benefit customers if you did. And I figured, I know you have kind of autonomous teams and everybody kind of works on their side of it, but should there maybe be more coordination so simple design functions like that are uniform across devices?
Yeah, it's good feedback. We try to, as much as we can, do that coordination. Sometimes across different device types, the location of buttons has to vary just because of the way that the boards are laid out.
Or because you've got inner stuff going on.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so depending on the size of the placement, you might have different kind of button placements, or someone we're trying to match to the next device or something like that.
Could be the new standard.
Our ID teams, really work to try to make those things consistent for our customers. And then on the devices for Kindle, there's a place in the settings that you can actually change what it says at the bottom in terms of time in the book, and so there's a way to change that
locations thing too, or that'd be. Let's see.
At this point, I couldn't help making a trip pretty deep into the weeds as Kevin was showing me a way that you can adjust the settings for a book. It doesn't seem to be replicable to me now, even with the latest software on my Oasis, but he was going into a settings that would enable you to set a different default for the information that shows up at the lower left of a page. If you're reading on your Kindle, you can see page location or the number of the pages, and there is a setting that will tell you which of those shows up as the default. You can also tap on those to toggle through the series. It didn't really go to my question about how come those choices at the lower left of the page are different on a Kindle than they are on the Kindle app on the iPhone, which was the point I was making. When I hear this and I listen to it, I think, gosh, these guys are showing their Kindle, and here's this guy that's been talking about the Kindle every week for 10 years. Maybe he just needs to lighten up because he's getting so exercised about such a minor issue. But I don't know. I felt strongly about it, and I take them at their word that they're obsessed with customer reaction. I am a Kindle customer for the past decade, and this really does bug me. I mean, when I'm reading a Kindle book on one device, why can't it act the same way on other devices? It just seems to me that's kind of a basic customer-friendly thing. So the message got through to Kevin and to Joerg, and they were taking it seriously. They weren't in any way kind of mocking me, at least in a way that I could detect. But then the message got through. So then we went a little further into the settings thing and then moved on from there.
So you set, you can show the clock while reading, you can show time left in the book, time left in the chapter, page in the book, or location. So you can have different settings there for...
So this would be like the default. If whatever of these I choose is the one I'm going to see.
Right,
in the lower
exactly.
corner.
So if you change to page, now you have page 25.
And then I can change here just by tapping when I'm in the book. They
exactly.
sort of toggle through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I didn't know that. That's
so it's an interesting way to be able to give customers choice. And how they love to see it. I personally, I'm the time in chapter.
Yeah, me too. I want to know if I can read this chapter
exactly
before I fall asleep.
And sometimes, I actually had to change my wife's device because sometimes when she's reading and I want her attention, I'm like, how much time do you have? So I can have a conversation with you, when we're at breakfast or something. Yeah, exactly. It's like you're in the middle of a chapter, you're like engrossed, and I'm like, okay, I got 4 minutes. I can
my
wait.
wife reads mysteries, and the rule is if she's at 90% more of the book, do not talk to her. So it's just
that's great.
So I say, what percent are you in the book?
Now the one pet peeve I do have is sometimes especially if you're in nonfiction, a lot of the appendices and bibliography and so forth is included in that percentage of the book.
I know.
And sometimes you're like, I have this much more left, and then it finishes at 95%.
I know.
Yeah.
They should fix that.
Yeah.
Because I've wondered, am I really this far away from finishing the book, or are there going to be 50 pages?
Yeah,
of notes?
it's an interesting question. Is like, does the epilogue and the bibliography count or not? So it's a good piece of feedback we'll give to our content
that could get
team.
really crazy because everybody have their own little thing on what perfection of reading the book is. Now, one thing that always comes up, there's sort of a low level of chronic anxiety among a lot of my listeners that the e-ink platform it's certainly not the buzz that it was when it was the only Kindle device 10 years ago. There's all this other stuff. We know people are reading more on phones, on tablets. What can you say to assure me and my other listeners that love the e-ink devices that it's still really important to keep innovating and improving it for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so we are absolutely committed to Kindle and to continuing to innovate for our Kindle customers. You'll see with the new Kindle Paperwhite bringing a lot of really great hardware innovation, making it thinner, lighter, having a flush front display, similar to the Kindle Oasis, so that it has that great reading experience with one hand. Waterproofing, bringing that down to our Kindle Paperwhite. Those are all really strong innovations that we're going to be doing on behalf of the customer and will continue to do in the future. So rest assured that this is important. It was our first device. We're in our 11th year of Kindle, and our customers are still buying as many Kindles as ever. As we mentioned, Prime Day was our biggest sales day of the year and actually of our history for Kindle. And so we see customers still love their Kindle devices. So we're excited to continue to innovate for them. And we mentioned earlier, a lot of the feedback we get is really outdoor reading, really amazing battery life, and I think something that is more important than ever is lack of distractions. So internally we say Kindle is really reading time, it's not screen time, because you don't have those distractions of email, social media, notifications, and phone calls and text messages. So we think it's always going to have a really strong place with our customers.
Sometimes I wonder, there was a talk about there was going to be a color Kindle, and there was, what was it, a company you bought, and I think you sold it. Mm-hmm. But it had a problem because it might have been a color screen, but it would have been fast enough to play video. Mm. And so, and there goes your single focused use. And I can almost imagine a time when there would, say e-ink came out and said, we've increased the speed 100-fold on the e-ink display. Now you can do tweets. Now you can do all the rest. The experimental browser is now like a real browser. It's almost like you'd have to say, yeah, we don't want it. This is what we're doing here. Yeah. But I know you can't talk about the future, but it strikes. I guess what I'm asking is, it sounds like you've really embraced that part of the e-ink Kindles, and whether it's e-ink or some other technology in the future, that this is like an oasis for readers who love to read, and that may be a continuing goal and mission that you have going forward.
Yeah, we use the term internally sanctuary. It's a sanctuary for reading that, you can really get lost in the author's world and the books that you're reading. And so the whole point of all of our devices is really to kind of fade away into the background. And so we always try to push to make it thinner, lighter, and that better reading experience so that you can really get lost in those books. And that will continue to be our focus going forward.
The price is going up $10 on the new Paperwhite. It was $120. This will be $130. The 4 gigabyte, and you've laid out the advantages of waterproof. If you were going to talk to a customer and say, $10 more, what am I getting for my $10? What's the most? Maybe what was the most difficult thing to do cost-wise, and then your sense of where does that $10 of value and maybe more really get delivered in this new Paperwhite?
Yeah. Well, we still think the new Paperwhite is amazing value for our customers. And as you look at some of the new features that we brought from our premium devices to the Paperwhite, the flush front display, very, very difficult to build a device at this price point without a bezel, raised bezel. And so that was a technical challenge to bring waterproof to this price point as well. Very challenging, and like I mentioned, not just water resistant but waterproof, so that customers, if they literally drop it into a pool, and we rated for IPX8, which means it could sit in water for 6 feet of depth for 60 minutes and still survive and be fine. So those innovations also continue to take a light and thin device and make it thinner and lighter. So all of those pieces, doubling the storage so customers can take even more books, bringing Audible to the device,
and
really being able to, it's a pretty long list of innovations that we've tried to bring to the device. And as we've mentioned before, I think we really are trying to just break even with the hardware, and we really see value with our customers aligned to if they're using the device, not just purchasing the device. And so we continue to take that philosophy with our devices.
Available when? Ships when?
So it's going to be pre-order is on October 16th,
right.
And then November 7th is when customers will start receiving their devices.
Great. Joerg, do you have anything you want to add here? What's the coolest thing from a product development perspective?
Joerg had been sitting on the other side of the table, a little bit away from the Yeti microphone, so I slid it over to give him a chance to make some comments. He's a very interesting guy. He's been at one of the other briefings that I was at, and it was tough to have to choose who I was talking to, but Kevin was kind of the ranking guy, and he was queued up to do the bulk of the briefing. But I'm glad I'd had a chance to share at least this bit of what Joerg's perspective was.
Kevin talked about most of the things. I mean, for us, it's bringing down Bluetooth to the Paperwhite, so giving our customers the choice to do audible, listen to audible books. I think that's a great feature. And then, of course, the waterproofing of the device at this price point. So we're spending a lot of time on the on engineering, reliability testing, on waterproofing. And we think that is actually a really important feature. We have a lot of customers that love that feature for the different experiences, reading in a bathtub, reading at a pool, reading at the beach, and bringing that to that price point. So that's what we're really proud of.
I assume you're listening to customers now to plan the next improvement in the lineup here for the Kindles. If somebody has a great idea, is there a best way to get it in front of you so that it can be part of the mix?
Yeah, our Kindle feedback, there's an email that actually customers do provide us feedback, even through reviews. We read reviews. We do a lot of analysis of what people are asking for. We look for themes in those reviews to understand what customers might be doing with the devices, what they might be looking for. And then we do a lot of forward-looking on technologies that might be coming. And we tend to really focus on those areas that are unique to an e-reader. Just back to your earlier question on how can we make the battery life even better. That's what people love and differentiates it from a tablet. How can we make that glare-free screen and that reading experience even better? How can we make sure that the books are even more interesting, and we have features that go beyond a book. So adding these personalization options, those are the kind of things that we hear from our customers and we try to react to.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I had about an hour and a half before the train back to Boston left. That gave me time to have lunch. I texted my nephew Jesse, who works in New York. He's in the film business and spends a fair amount of time around Penn Station because he lives in New Jersey. So he recommended a place that turned out to be very tasty, the Shake Shack, and had a hamburger and a vanilla malt. And then as I was heading back to Penn Station, there was a sunny spot in front of Macy's that I stopped just to recollect some thoughts and start processing how I was going to share this experience with you on the show.
It's 2 hours since I had my briefing at Amazon on the new Paperwhite. I noticed they weren't calling it the all-new Paperwhite. I think I prefer just calling it the new Paperwhite. That's simple. And it's pretty impressive. It is waterproof. It's got a flat screen instead of the bezel. And it's a little thinner, a little lighter. When these things start out so thin and light, to get any improvements on those dimensions is impressive. It costs $10 more than the existing Paperwhite. And I asked Kevin, Keith, what's the best way to explain why that price went up, either in cost or value to the customer. He had a pretty good response to that, which you'll hear. I continue to be a little bit frustrated with how these things are set up. I pressed a little with my contacts in the Amazon PR department to see if I could record the whole session. To spend 8 hours coming down here by train and back, and then have a half-hour session of which I can only record half of it is a little bit frustrating, but I tried to calm down from that and enter into it with some equanimity, and that's what happened. And these guys are great. I really appreciate having time with people at this high level in the company doing such interesting work. And I know there's a lot of other briefings that they've been doing these 2 days. I am standing on West 34th Street across from Crocs Old Navy. I have my back to Macy's. It's a beautiful sunny day. Probably what's the temperature? Probably in the mid-60s. And I've got about an hour before I catch the Acela back to Boston at 1 o'clock. I'll be getting home at 5, and I'll be putting together this week's show once I get back to the house. Long day on 4 hours of sleep, plus some nap time on the train.
All right, well, let's dig into some of the details on the new device. I've got the press release, which did arrive. It's very thorough, as I knew it would be, and it gives me a chance to just work through and emphasize the aspects of this. This really is, I think, a notable improvement of the Paperwhite, which is the best-selling Kindle. It has been for a long time now, and they worked on it in ways that I know must have been challenging. When you make a device that's that thin, even thinner and lighter, that's always impressive. Even if when I had a chance to hold two of them, one in one hand, one in the other, I couldn't detect it. I just love the idea that they keep pressing in that direction, because it really does matter. As they say, it helps you disappear into the story if you're not carrying something that's heavy, especially when you're reading in bed. The Audible part is pretty neat. I haven't used that except to try it on my Oasis. So now the Paperwhite has the ability to hook up with a speaker or earbuds and listen to a story, and you can go into the Audible store straight from the Kindle. I was able to replicate that by upgrading the software on my Oasis so that it's like the new Paperwhite. And you can switch back and forth. You can be reading. I have a Amazon Tap speaker here, and I downloaded a book that's actually an Audible original, so that it's only available on Audible. It's a Michael Lewis book, which is about big storms coming. And let's see what that sounds like. I'm tapping play on my Oasis.
Audible Originals presents The Coming Storm, written and performed by Michael Lewis.
The Coming Storm. As she walked the path that the tornado...
So now I can switch. There is you just go back, and then you can be switching to the reading of it. Oh, no, on this one you can't, because there isn't a book version of it. The only version you can listen to on this Michael Lewis Audible Original is on this. But if it was another book, and I've got one, Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, a great book that's being helpful in kind of mom's situation after her hip fracture, there I can switch back and forth, and there's just tabs to do that. Pretty handy. I think that's an important addition to the Paperwhite. It makes sense that kind of the flagship Kindle would now be able to have that integration with Audible. In mentioning the weight, I actually looked at the numbers. And again, these are things that I think it would be hard to detect with your hand. But when I looked at the data for the last Paperwhite, the 2015 Paperwhite, with Wi-Fi, it weighed 7.3 ounces, and that made it heavier than the Oasis, which was 6.8 ounces. Now, the new Paperwhite is 6.4 ounces, so it's actually lighter than the Oasis, which I think is kind of cool. Again, I think these would be hard to detect, but it shows that really pushing the Paperwhite envelope as a result is in that now being the lightest of the Kindles. I think it's probably lighter than the basic Kindle, but I'd have to double check that. That 6.4 ounces for the new Paperwhite is actually 12% lighter than the 2015. The 3G Paperwhite, for some reasons, weighs a little more, and the 3G version of it is 10.5% lighter. So that's what they were using in the press releases. If you get a new Paperwhite it says a limited time offer. I don't know how long that's going to be available, but you get 6 months of Kindle Unlimited for free. That's a $60 value, so that's pretty good if you thought you might like to try Kindle Unlimited. And it does have the basic Paperwhite for $130. Has twice the storage of the previous model, so it has 8 gigabytes of storage instead of 4. And then you can buy a more expensive one if you go up to 32 gigabytes of storage. This is with special offers. Instead of costing $130, that costs $160. Those prices, if you don't want special offers, I love special offers. They're always books in my case, and sometimes they're interesting. The basic 8 gigabyte Paperwhite will cost $150, and if you want the 32 gigabyte, it goes up to $186. Oddly, there's only one configuration that enables you to get the 3G coverage. That's the cellular ability, which means if you're at the airport and your plane is leaving soon, you've just got time to grab one more book, and you haven't got time to get on the airport's Wi-Fi, it can be pretty handy to have that always-on 3G capability. To get that on the new Paperwhite, you'll have to have the 32 gigabyte model, and you'll have to have it without the special offers, and the total price for all of that will be $250. Still a pretty good buy, and quite a bit less expensive than the Oasis version of that. Other things that they've improved, there are 5 LED lights, so the bath of light that comes over the Paperwhite is going to be a little smoother, a little brighter than it was on the previous one. It's waterproof, of course. That has been emphasized. I saw someone, it might have been The Verge, call it water resistant, and then they ran a correction. I'm sure that Amazon's crack PR team got after them because they said it's not water resistant, it's waterproof. Now, it talks about an IPX rating. I don't know what that means, but they do specify that you can put this new Paperwhite into up to 2 meters of fresh water. So that's about 6 feet for up to 60 minutes. Maybe next summer I'll do a test of it to tell you how long you can put it in salt water, especially if there's a little surf here at Ocean Park. The press release talks about a back made of soft, grippable material. that doesn't say rubberized, but that makes me wish I had actually picked up that thing so I could tell you what my impressions of the gripability of it is, but I suspect it feels pretty good in the hand. I always like to have a case on my Kindles. They did have some cases there, examples. There was one that was a pretty nice leather case, $50 or $60. I don't like the cases that they were showing as well as I like the case on the Oasis, because on the Oasis you can bend back a corner of the case and then it will stand up on a table. Sometimes when Darlene and I are at a coffee shop, I like just having the Oasis stand up on its own case without having to lean it up against something. The Paperwhite case is just a flat case. It doesn't have the ability to turn into a stand. There might be some third-party cases that would generate that capability at some point. The most striking design improvement on the Paperwhite is the one that I could see just by looking at the example that was at the briefing, and that's the full flush screen. There isn't a bezel or kind of an edge around it. I think that this is important because it just looks more modern. It looks like the Oasis, which has got a totally flush screen, and so it looks more like the Oasis than it is going to look like the standard Kindle and also the Voyage, which is still in the lineup, or the older Paperwhites. There's something about that screen being recessed into the bezel. I think I've always thought, well, dust could get caught in there or sand, and it maybe looks like it could cast a tiny little shadow, and it's just not as good a design. I think they were smart to focus on that. They probably did hear a lot of feedback about it. The size of the screen is the same as the earlier Paperwhite. It's just that the margin around the screen is now at the same level as the screen itself, so it all looks very smooth and easy to read. The lightness, I think, is because they've got it's a plastic screen, so that helps affect the weight, and it's easy to read just like the previous Kindles and that same 6-inch size. So new flush front design, that was emphasized in all the material, and I can see why, because that had to be hard to do, and it looks really sharp. Before I finish up telling you about the software update, which coincided with the release of the Paperwhite and now has spread to the other devices, I was able to download it on my Oasis. I'd like to check in with some of your comments. I heard from Barbara, who wrote, "Good morning, Len. I'm a longtime listener to your Kindle Chronicles. Our book club recently read A Gentleman in Moscow. It was enjoyed by all. I read the book on my Kindle Oasis. Some others had a hardcover edition. I was surprised to learn the hardcover was full of interesting footnotes. My Kindle lacked the footnotes. Is this common for Amazon to not include footnotes in their Kindles? I certainly missed the footnotes in A Gentleman in Moscow. I just thought you might know. Thanks for your help." I have never come across that in my reading, and I haven't heard about it from any other listeners. My first question was, were the footnotes possibly tucked in the back of the book, making it difficult to find them, and maybe there weren't links to them? In a well-formatted book, if there's a footnote in the Kindle version, just tap on the little superscript number, and it will take you either to the bottom of the page or the back if that's where the footnotes are. So this might have been just something that wasn't formatted accurately, but certainly that's a real flaw in a book if you can't have the same content that someone reading it in hardcover is. So, Barbara, thanks for sending that along from Los Gatos, California. Dan wrote, it's in response to some of the reports of the new Paperwhite, very enticing. When it says soft feel, is it like a rubber feel? Well, I have to go back to the press release talking. It's grippable. Whether it's a rubber feel, we'll have to determine when we see it. I like, by the way, the fact that now that there are Amazon bookstores and there are kiosks and lots of malls and Whole Foods, with a new Paperwhite out now, say compared to 3 years ago when the last update, you really have plenty of places that you can go and actually feel one, and you can decide if you think the screen is grippable or it's pleasantly rubberized or anything else about it. You can check out that full flush, that's easy to say, flush front screen, and you're not just depending on images from the website. So there's been an improvement in our ability to check things out before we get them. Dan continued, I'm interested, but I think I'll stay with my Voyage for now. I'd like to see if there's any update for the Oasis. Although I think it's unlikely Amazon would update another Kindle device soon, they'd probably have done them together. I'm torn. I see the new home screen will be an update for some older Paperwhites. Was there any word that they might bring it to the Voyage and Oasis? That might help me with my decision then. I think they said that the update of the software is going to be available for everything more recent than 2013, and I think that would include the Voyage, so probably the Voyage is going to get that update. Can't wait to hear more about this about it on this week's episode. Dan concludes, hope your mom is improving. Our thoughts and prayers are with her and your family. I'll say Mom is definitely improving. She had hip surgery, I think, about a month ago, and the rehab is winding down to where she may be able to join my dad in their residential unit in this place that they're living at west of Boston. And it's been a rough road for her, certainly, and the rest of the family, but it's gratifying how we're all pulling together, and each day seems to get a little bit better. Appreciate your thoughts and prayers. John Aga wrote, this is before there was any news about the trip. I think I had mentioned on the last show that I was going to New York City. I think most of you probably knew from past coverage where I was going to be going without having to say it in a way that in any way undermined the embargo. John says, I think I have a good regarding your trip to New York City, I think I have a good idea. First, your trip is about 2 new Kindles. Well, close. A new basic Kindle with an upgrade with an e-ink Pearl display to an e-ink Carta display with a PPI increase. Next, a Paperwhite 4. The Paperwhite 4 will have an improved lighting system, check. Bluetooth for Audible, check. And 32 gigabytes of internal storage. So, John, you nailed it in terms of your hunch about the Paperwhite. I wouldn't have been surprised to see an upgrade of the basic Kindle as well, but I think you're right that if they were going to do that, they would have done it at the same time, so probably not this year. John continues, my wish list for additional bells and whistles, increased RAM to make it more responsive, a microchip upgrade to improve responsiveness, upgrade the Kindle operating system, which I believe is based on Android 4.0. The newest Fire tablet is based on a newer Android version 7.0, also called Nougat. A smooth screen edge like the Voyage, not a raised edge like the Paperwhite 3. Well, check. Built-in overdrive support. That's the library platform, since we have overdrive as an app on Fire tablets. Dreaming big, built-in speakers, and the ability to plug in wired earbuds. I miss that audio support from my old Kindle keyboard. Looking forward to the big reveal, and thank you for all the time, energy, and passion you share with us. Thanks, John. As you can tell, this is wicked fun. Let's finish up with the software update. The home screen is changed, and you can swipe up and it reveals some additional tips, recommendations. They seem to be based on your reading. I saw that on my Oasis update. I couldn't see one thing that I remember seeing at the briefing, which was kind of a little inspirational quote about how cool it is to be a reader. The one I remember seeing said that it lowers your stress level if you read just a little bit each day. You can personalize your reading with different settings. If you like the font a certain way, the boldness level set just right, orientation, you can create saved settings that duplicate that whenever you're reading, or you can switch among different settings. Pretty cool. You can return Kindle owners lending library books from within your library with a long pressing on a borrowed book and then selecting return. The percent of battery remaining is shown. Labels for the standard toolbar. Labels are added under each icon on the standard toolbar for improved navigation. So spiffing up of the software in ways that look pretty good. Not like dramatic, and you're still going to be able to find your way around on the software without any problems at all. But that's and you can. If you connect to Wi-Fi, you should be seeing this software update arrive automatically. If you're eager to get to it, I'll have a link in the show notes on where you can find the upgrade for your model. I've already recorded the interview for next week. It is with Simon Eskildsen. He wrote an insightful blog post titled How I Read, and I guarantee you that you won't think about the way you read the same after listening to Simon's thoughtful discussion of this subject. I'm also hoping to connect him with Joerg and Kevin, because his recommendation for the Kindle platform going deeper as a way for people to not only read and recall, but to actually learn from what they read over a period of time. I think that's the kind of thing that the Kindle team might just get excited about. So I'll be trying to get them connected after next week's show. This is Glenn Edgerly in Ocean Park, Maine. Thanks for listening.